And for our
Connecting
next
to LinkedIn.
caller, we will welcome, who have we got on the line? Ah, hi, Alistair. Thank you for calling into the show. What would you like to tell us?
It's like I feel like the guy from Zoolander, right, with the little phone where he goes like that and he opens it. That's how I felt.
The
I'm
little
assuming
phone.
we are live, right? I'm hoping. I haven't checked, but the
Through the
last two
magic of
times that we
technology.
did this, the magic
Three
of
times,
technology.
four
Did I
times.
wear
This is
my
our fifth show, right?
shit? Well, then the name season 3 episode is this number 5? I don't know. I'm going to stop labeling these things, and I'm
You
just
know,
going to
labels are so
leave.
destructive. So destructive. We just need to be more inclusive and less labely.
I'm going to put on my Jeffrey Dahmer glasses. It's supposed to help with my eyes, but it would help if I wiped it. Anyhow, can I play the music?
I'm confirming that we are in fact live, and we are live. I see us on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn needs a jingle, so roll the jingle.
Okay. I don't have
Right.
any notes up. I don't have any notes up. That's concerning. I was very well prepared, and now I don't feel like I'm prepared. These glasses make me look weird. There we go. I have the notes up. So, welcome to SCI Fridays, where firewalls are feelings, VPNs are vibes, and inside the network is just a comforting lie we tell ourselves. This is the show where we take a blunt, slightly cynical look at security compliance and identity in the real world, where tools are expensive, configs are messy, and attackers mostly just log in rather than break in. Good afternoon, Nick. Welcome. This is recorded. It's not recorded, right? It's live.
It is
Live
live.
Friday, the 10th of July, 2026.
That's right. It is
Oh,
not TGI Fridays. It's SCI Fridays. We are just as grateful that it is Friday. We've made it through the week, and it's your daily, yay, weekly dose of security, compliance, and identity news. So beyond excited to be newsing with you again, Alistair.
did you say newsing? It is
Newsing, not musing, but
newsing.
newsing. Because we have a
Newsing.
section of in the news.
In the news.
And
So, so for those that are new, each week we unpack the gap between pretty architecture diagrams and what actually happens in production. Modern attack paths, zero trust, cloud and hybrid madness, identities gone wrong, which is our favorite topic, and the compliance controls that pass audits while your tenant quietly burns in the background. New
burns.
episodes drop every Friday on your favorite streaming platform of choice. Currently, we are on LinkedIn and we are on YouTube. We might be doing an audio only version of this in the foreseeable future, but that's up to me and Claude Code to wire up our website for that, which I haven't done yet. Oh, what are we talking about today, Nick? What are we talking about today?
We're talking about data. It's a little bit of a modification on, Shakira says hips don't lie, and we like to say that data doesn't lie, but it does leak.
Yes, today's main topic is the data doesn't lie, right? Shakira. And weirdly enough, like last week, we talked about networks and some endpoints. We've talked about endpoints, we talked about networks, and now we're going to talk about the top left-hand corner of of the zero trust poster that lives rent free in my head as if I was a teenager with a picture of Samantha Fox on my wall, right? So yes, we are going to be talking. Our
That's
main
showing
topic
your
today is to
age.
talk about. Yes, then and now, Samantha Fox. Wow, my first sort of teenage crush, right, was Samantha Fox. She's definitely older than I am, and I should go look her up on the interwebs to see
Maybe not
what she
anymore. I think
actually
it might
looks
just
like today.
ruin the picture in your head. No disrespect, but
It was a
probably
car magazine, right?
yeah. Well, it's that thing of never meet your heroes, and maybe you don't want to meet the folks who are much older now, like the Hoff. I mean, he didn't age as well as he did when he was running on the beach with his Baywatch costume.
Yeah, but he wasn't. So if you look at someone like Bruce Springsteen, right?
Oh, he doesn't
He's
age.
aged well. He's like 76 and he's still on stage and going crazy. I want to age like Bruce Springsteen, the boss, right?
Or like
Uh,
Bruce Willis, he shaved his head and he smolders. He just does the
yeah, but his
thing in the
brain's
camera.
fried though. He's got dementia or something.
Oh dear.
Yes, yeah. He's literally on his last legs. Speaking about last legs, for those who don't know how the show works, and if I can get my mouse to go there, just an idea of how we run the show. And it's the same every week. We have an intro. You don't have a security problem. You have a data ownership problem, and we've already talked about that. We'll go into in the news straight after this, and then we'll jump into the main topic, which is your data doesn't lie. And naturally, we have Nick's top tip of the week, right? That Nick will take us through, and then some takeaways from us. And that is what is going to be your viewing pleasure over the next sort of 40 or so minutes. So in the news, I suppose when we get there, we'll get there. But today's topic is really to talk about, it's not about security, it's about data, right? We've labored on the point about
I
talking
have
about
an analogy for you,
identities.
if you like.
Give me one.
So, since this is the fifth show, if we're counting, there or thereabouts, if we think about the progression where we've talked about, and we like to start with identity, but think about identity is the key, and then the device is the doorway, the application is the room, and the data is the thing being stolen.
Yes, yes. The crown jewels, right? Someone is going to
The point of the
steal.
hack.
Yeah, well, they're taking something, right? For those in South Africa that have been burgled, be it your vehicle or your house, that's typically what we're talking about right now. Someone is coming in to steal your stuff, and in your case, in the cloud, your stuff is your data. They're not stealing an application; they're stealing the data inside of that application. And today's session is really to talk about what data ownership means. We're not talking about application ownership, right? We're talking
No.
about data, right?
Yeah, because application
Structured and
ownership is
unstructured
something
data specifically.
completely different thing, and we would have to ask what is an application anyway. Besides the fact that you and I talk about application ownership a lot in the identity space, we can also talk about logical application ownership when it comes to, well, away from the identity, but what about the thing? Like SharePoint is an application. Who owns that?
But before we do that, where's my mouse? Where is my mouse? It doesn't. Oh, there's too many screens, Nick. Too many screens. So today we want to talk about in the news.
That's so exciting.
We try and look at, if you don't want to believe us on what we're telling you to do, we want to give you real world examples of what's happened in the field at companies that are much larger than the organizations we work for, Nick, and how data has been exfilled from these companies, even though you'd expect them to have the right security posture and things in place to manage all of these things, right?
One would think, and we'll start with, why don't you hit next? And we'll start with Assurance America. Tons and tons and tons of data. I believe this one was personal driving and insurance data, 6.9 million people. Assurance America confirmed a breach involving personal information and driver's license numbers. Can you imagine? I mean, what else do you need to prove identity? And this would probably be one of the most vulnerable hacks that you can think of. And it happened through a targeted attack of an employee. And that attack happened on the 16th. Company detected suspicious activity on the 17th. However, consider that from one day to the next, 6.9 million records left the building.
And I don't want to say that we see this all the time, right? But we do see this all the time. And this is what is the scary part. I don't know what these threat actors are going to be doing with it. If it was just some random, let's see if we can do it, and then say, hey, we did it because the threat actor wants some sort of notoriety. It doesn't look like there was any ransomware around this.
Well, if you consider what the data represents and the ramification for identity theft, one of the crown jewels in America is proving who you are based on driver's license records, but also consider that we've got a combination of identity, vehicle, insurance, account, and claims data. How much more do you need against a person? If I knew all of that about Alistair, I could steal your life. I could impersonate you, arguably for the rest of your life. And I think one of the opportunities to talk about in this webinar is that, and we'll talk about data and classification, but the opportunity is classification can't stop at one field like first name, last name. If we think about POPIA and GDPR, it has to be the context of what that record is. But that is our first one, right? So Assurance America, 6.9 million records left the building.
Yeah. Now, bigger one. Whoever KDDI, I don't know who they are, but I mean, again,
I'll tell you who they are. It gets worse. So we've gone from one extreme. In America, what did we steal? And if you think about the geopolitical mapping that you and I used to do, Al, about what's important to whom in which country, right? So we just talked about the Americans, and example number 3 is even worse. Example number 1 is in America, and the second one is in Japan. Japanese telecommunication company, KDDI. So what happened? Email. Attackers compromised a shared email platform that is used to provide email services across several ISPs. And if you think about that, that's like, well, it would be like a shared Hetzner for our South African companies, right?
wow.
12.2 million email addresses that were compromised. Passwords for 7.6 million people, and the potential exposure on current and previous accounts roughly in the region of about 14.2 million people. And how they got in was a vulnerability, third-party software. We've spoken about supply chain attacks in the show before, Al. It's a big deal. The attack happened on the 17th of June, 2026. And from detection to report, well, the numbers don't lie. Consider that we have an email and address password combination that we can now use against how many other services in a password spray attack, and see where else that plausible identity is using services. Banking, Spotify, Netflix, Microsoft 365, VPNs, employee systems. This is a biggie.
That's quite scary when it's a shared email platform that
Mm,
multiple ISPs use, right? I mean,
mm.
how many different passwords do you have, Nick?
Literally dozens, because I don't know what they are. I use a password manager.
Okay, I don't. I don't use a password manager. I have like 5 or 6 different passwords that I
Mm.
remember. All my
You
accounts are
recycle them,
MFA'd.
right?
Yeah,
Yes.
all my
Yes.
accounts are MFA'd. I've got 3 different authenticator apps: Google, Microsoft, and then I've got one for my business side, right?
Mm.
And then obviously with the banking app, it's there's a second factor from an approval perspective. So
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about my passwords, but that's me, right? You've got another way of doing it. You're using a password manager, but there are
Well, I
people
use
out there that
passwords
don't, and
and MFA, same as you.
yeah,
I've just made
yeah,
the second factor harder, and it also offloads the responsibility from me into a system. If I want to share a secure password with you, I can do that within the app. So
yeah.
there's
Password
advantages of
questioning,
doing
yeah,
that. And I
yeah.
like the point that you're making, Alistair, that passwords themselves, just two factors, username and password, is relatively irrelevant without a third or even fourth factor.
Yeah, yeah. Because you have been pawned. The databases that Troy Hunt collects, chances
Mm-hmm.
are this is going to be there. You can go check if
Mm-hmm.
your account's been compromised. But there are people out there that don't have a second factor for a legacy app, and someone's going to get in with
Yeah.
this breach and ninja dust at the end, right? And then the compromise really starts there because it's a knock-on effect. And again,
You know, the irony here is delicious, of course. Who? Well, Accenture. What do they do? Well, they tell the rest of us how to be secure. And this was why Midnight Blizzard for Microsoft was such a big deal. So if you listen to the press release, there was an isolated security breach, which sounds like, don't look here, we're fine, just look here, isolated security breach. And there was no effect on operations or service delivery. That's in the press. But there's a bit of irony here because there's also the attacker story. So the threat actor here is known as 888, and they said, actually, we have 35 gigs of Accenture data. And that's meant to include internal source code, RSA keys, SSH keys, Azure tokens, Azure storage keys, and internal files. Now, if you consider 35 gigs of customer data and customer secrets, if you thought identity numbers on customer records were sensitive, imagine how much, and we just have to think about the intentional, unintentional leak that happened with Anthropic around some of its internal data and how the rest of the world prompts now as a result. But now think about the impact of a source code, a deployment script, a config file that tells you how somebody thought and how something is secured, besides the fact that you can rotate a key or a token. There is so much out there that can provide direct access to customers and inferred access. Effectively, you've got a chain, right? So I know something about you now. I know something about Alistair's configuration. So the code shows you the architecture, the configuration can expose a system. Think about SCCM and all the things that it touches during its patching landscape. There's not just a thing here about secrets like usernames and passwords, but the very fact that a consulting company whose livelihood exists to protect secrets and tell its customers, the consulting model of give me your watch and I'll tell you the time, 35 gigs is a lot of customer data that's out there, reusable customer data, multimodal customer data. This is why the irony here is delicious, Al.
I wonder if we're going to get a cease and desist order because we're talking about the censure. I don't
It's
know.
in the press. We're quoting articles.
Oh, look, if this doesn't scare you, then I don't know what will. For any customer, if you're a consultant working inside of a bank, if you are a customer, um, a C-level, for whatever the reason you like Nick and I, and we've crossed paths before, and you've not considered something like zero trust, here is your sign. Here is your
The
sign
bat
to start
signal, in
worrying about.
fact.
Yeah, yeah. Look, and we've been talking about zero trust for years. It sounds like a broken record. Least privilege, verify explicitly, and always assume breach. And to add to that, we've always said, well, if you're going to assume breach, you need to prepare for breach. And a lot of customers will go down the first two: least privilege, verify explicitly. Okay, signals, all of these things, right? And like you said the other day, trust nobody and nothing. Don't trust the location, even, right? Uh, Companies need to start actually doing that, because what most of these attacks were identity compromised, right? Someone's identity. It wasn't some sort of CVE and some sort of weird prompt
Correct.
injection exploit, right? None
An
of the new cool
employee
shit,
or a
right? It wasn't a
workstation.
0-day attack.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think this just goes back to what we predicted 3 years ago about identity being the attack vector, not the only, the, as in forget everything else. Although today we are talking about these people have got in, what can you do to mitigate the risk of what's been stolen, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. We want to talk about protecting what actually matters. So if we have to go down that route of assuming breach, preparing for breach, so assume that someone's in your organization. If you look at the stats from, I think it was the beginning of last year, Nick, when we talked about how long do you think a threat actor is inside your organization before you actually realize that there's someone inside? It's not like someone gets into your house and the dog barks, right? It's not that. This person is, there's a new movie with Channing Tatum in it. I can't remember the name. He breaks out of prison. I think he breaks out of prison,
Oh,
and
yes.
then he
Yes.
lives in the roof of this
It's a
building,
true
right?
story.
Really?
It's a true story.
I haven't
So,
watched the movie.
not going to spoil it for you, for anyone, but it's a true story of how he breaks into a very famous toy store and lives in that roof and actually stays there for months and months and months and subsists off the whatever he finds in the store. And obviously the movie glamorizes that whole thing, but true story.
Yeah, with the love interest and all of those things,
Of
right?
course.
Uh, and this is real, right? People get in, they spend, I think the stats were like 180 days before you even, it's just more than 180 days before you realize that someone else is in your house. And that's the scary part, right? So what do? We protect the perimeter to stop them from getting in. That's how how we live in South Africa, right? We've got barbed wire, electrified fencing. We live in a state to make it more. But someone can get into. Imagine someone gets into your estate and they've got a master key to all the houses in the estate. And every night they go to this house and then that house and they take something that you don't see. When they broke into my house in Johannesburg, I only found out probably 4 or 5 hours after they've broken into my house. I got home at 2. That day, I actually put my Surface laptop in my cupboard in the bedroom for whatever the reason. I can't remember why it was there. I went to go look for that. And this was at 6 p.m. I was having dinner, right? And I stayed in a security estate in Johannesburg, right? A big one, multiple gates. Um, and I was looking for my notebook, couldn't find my notebook. It's very odd because I remember putting it there. I mean, this was so about six
And
years ago,
and then you had
7 years ago.
that feeling
It's like,
started.
this is impossible, right? Where's my
Yes.
notebook? Uh, Opened up the cupboard, my bedroom cupboard, a watch, rings, and then I started going through the house because clearly someone's gotten into my house. And they took my camera out of the camera bag. They took my notebook without the power supply. So I don't know how they ever got it to work because it's a Surface laptop, right? It's a US. The Surface wasn't even in the country.
Yeah.
But they were in and they took things like my camera out of the camera bag, closed the camera bag. Didn't take the batteries, just the camera and the lens. And well, just the camera, not even the lens, just the camera. And that's what we're talking about, right? So how do I go about protecting what matters inside my house? All my valuables should have put it into a safe, right? A big walk-in safe, all my valuables in there. And we're pretty much telling people that your valuables should be managed and locked down because someone's in your house, right? And that's really where we're going. The problem is data security is the last thing that people really care about, Nick. I mean, when we start Zero Trust, we start with identities and endpoints, right? And then we look at ZTNA. And in the right-hand corner, we've got applications, infrastructure, and we've got this thing on the top that says data, right? And nobody knows what to do with data. Your experience, Nick, not looking at data, because you're on the left-hand side most of the time, right? I sort of sit in the corner on the top there, and then I have to talk to customers about retention and well, DLP, right? You do DLP. You must know what DLP is because it started with Exchange, right?
So very, very comfortable with DLP. And one of the things that we always safeguarded with DLP is intentional as well as accidental exposure. And if we think about the core tenet of Zero Trust, Al, Zero Trust assumes breach. And if the data cannot leave, you've achieved Zero Trust. And DLP, and we'll talk about this, and you have this lovely delineation around data leaving versus data leaking. So I'm not going to spoil that. But if the data cannot leave, either through a physical path, like there's no egress from your network, or it's encrypted junk, you have won. You have won at life, because if that data cannot leave your system, or, and let's just imagine this, the Japanese folks, if all of those emails were encrypted and you took 12 million folks worth of mail with you and you couldn't open it, then there's no value. And we understand that you want to store mail or you want to store encrypted data because, you know, quantum is coming and one day you'll be able to decrypt that. But today, there's no business value to that. So DLPL for us is a really, really big deal. And we have conversations with customers around exactly what's on the slide, which is if it defines your business, the business should define what's important to protect.
Absolutely. And it's difficult because even the business doesn't know what it is, right? They literally don't. They operate under the assumption that this is how it works. And the business also operates under the assumption that, yeah, we can share stuff, right? It's all the boring things, right? It's very boring talking to a customer about data leak and data loss. And thanks for that segue when we talk about the differences between data leak and data loss, because DLP is for data loss, right? So stop people from sharing sensitive information. You've got a DLP policy that says you can't share, even via email, that this document that's labeled as confidential. But you have to get to a point where you label the document as confidential. That never happens, right? We talk to customers about, you know, eNow's got this really cool tool called M365 GovScore. It's 365 GovScore. And when you run the freemium version in very much the same way that you run the app GovScore, it will literally come back to you and say, you've shared 201 folders from SharePoint. You've also got 173 OneDrive folders shared. Now, I don't care how big your organization or how much data you have living inside of your tenant. If there are no sensitivity labels applied to the content inside that folder, you have no idea what content is being put in that folder that's now shared. Shared channels, right? Teams with external guests, yeah? These things the end user doesn't care about. And we just allow these things to happen. How many customers have actually locked down Teams and SharePoint site creation, or at least group creation, modern group creation, right? Uh, have you ever walked into a customer that has not said something about, hey, we don't know where our data is? Or, oh, we use sensitivity labels, we've got that. And we don't want to share files. We're not allowing external access. So sharing is switched off by default, but we still have owners for teams, which means they're a site collection administrator. Oh, and we allow mails going out externally to external customers. Like, I'm sorry, you can't say that you don't allow external sharing, but someone can attach a document to an email because you don't have a classification schema for content, right? Now, the converse, you go speak to a bank. Bank is most restrictive when it comes to these things. But everyone between that, banks and the least restrictive where nobody cares about data, that's the sort of middle ground that we're living in, right? And what people don't understand, right, when it comes to data specifically, oh no, Microsoft says, oh no, it's encrypted at rest and in transit. What does that even mean, Nick? Rest and in transit. What does it mean?
So actually, if we think about it, nothing. Because in transit means that when I send you an email, it occurs over an encrypted path. Okay. If that mail is stored, or if that file is stored, where is it stored? It's stored on an encrypted file system, which helps you if you break into the data center or if you sniff the wire. Logically, it means nothing because our attacks occur at the logical level, not at the physical level. No one breaks into a Microsoft data center ever and steals data. That just doesn't happen, right? However, they
Yeah.
do break into your tenant where your data is encrypted at rest, but you don't access data at rest. You access the data in the service. So the value is none.
And yes, it's a misnomer, right? It's a false positive, right? Where you think you're secure because the platform's encrypted. Yes, and yes, gone are the days of the FBI or the CIA or the local cop shop down the road going, "I want a wiretap." Shit. I think I just carbon dated both of us right now because kids don't understand wiretaps, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
they don't get it.
Actual copper,
But
actual
yeah,
wires.
yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, back in my days in Rhodesia, um, it was a company called Xylab. And Xylab, when you used to send a fax, it would go over copper, right?
Ah, fax, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And they could, um, they were used by security agencies in the UK to interpret that fax data from a wiretapping perspective, because you could tap, because you're now tapping the file, right? The piece of
That's
paper,
right.
the file that comes out through the fax machine, right? And that's how they became sort of notorious for OCRing data, because they could intercept a fax and then pull that and then OCR the data. Encryption means nothing today in the rest and the in transit uh, from a rest and from a data at rest and a data in transit. However, you can encrypt your data, right? Ergo sensitivity labels in Microsoft 365, so that you have that. So even if someone steals your data, they need a decryption key, ergo an identity that has access to the content that can be authenticated against Entra ID. So we're saying that even if someone steals your data, like BitLocker, right? Although we both know that BitLocker is not fallible.
Yes.
So
After
it's
yellow
not a
key.
perfect science. Yeah, yeah. But in very much the same way that you would encrypt a disk, you can also encrypt files in that way. And that's where encryption matters, right? Not for rest and in transit. Ergo, using sensitivity labels inside of your organization. So it's vitally important that you understand the ramifications of saying, assuming breach, someone's in my data center, how do I lock down the content that I have, right? Well, encrypt the content, not just the place that the content is stored on, like BitLocker and a drive, right? Don't do that. And then, yes, being able to move into how these labels that you've just applied actually gets used, right? And it's an interesting thing. And I think this is where Microsoft walks in the room and says, we're the world's best all round, right? The Jacques Callis, again, carbon dating, the Jacques Callis of IT. Not
The
the
John
Daniel
T.
Craig of
Rhodes.
IT, that's Nicholas Blank. The John T. Rhodes, the Jacques Callis. Pick a favorite cricketer of circa late 1990s, the early 2000s, but in very much the same way that they became the world's best all-rounders, so does Microsoft when you look at how they use the tools that you have, right? It's like having a drill bit, and that little Allen key thing to undo the chuck so that you can put the drill bit in there, right? A lot of companies out there will give you the drill, but they won't give you the bit. Or they'll give you the drill and the bit, but you can't change the size of the drill bit with that little Allen key jobby, right? And everyone loses that. So Microsoft gives you all of the things in that way. They'll give you the drill bit. They'll even give you screws for the wall. And when we look at DLP and the tech that's available inside of Microsoft Purview, not the data well, I suppose data access governance, well, not data access governance, unified data management, data governance. The stuff that we care about when it comes to locking down files. You can lock down a file. You can also keep it for X amount of time. Data leak prevention, right? If someone's in, delete the files that you shouldn't keep because your blast radius is reduced. So not 12.9 million, 7 million, because the other ones are redundant. And then also the way DLP policies use information protection policies and retention policies. And they apply, they use it as signals, conditions, right? If I've got a document that is labeled with a confidential label, I don't care who you're sending it to. If it's an external user, it's not allowed to be sent. Now, companies like Symantec have a flavor of that where they'll go, well, if the document is encrypted, it's regarded as sensitive, so you can't send it externally. Yeah, that's the way they do it. They've got interesting ways. But from a Microsoft perspective, you can tell a DLP, well, you can tell it, you can create a DLP policy that will look for a condition equals true. Like, does this document have a sensitivity label and what it is? If it's an internal or public label, sure. Public labels, they can send it to a Gmail account. But if it's got a confidential label, you can't mail it to a Gmail account. That's great. That's out of the box. You can switch it on within 27 minutes. And that's why it's important from a data classification perspective to understand these things so that you can use labeling, not just information protection, but retention labels, or a combination of retention and information protection labels for DLP policies. And at the same time, you can use those labels when it comes to a cloud access security broker stuff like Defender for Cloud Apps, right? Netscope kind of does the same thing. Symantec does the same thing. But this is baked into that license that you've already paid for that you're not using. And that's why it's important that you understand what these tools actually do, because most people don't look at data. It's boring, right? Why do we care about how long we keep it for? Should keep it for forever, right? That's the common theme. Nobody goes and says, oh, HR said that we can actually keep this for 7 minutes. Not for 7 minutes, for 7 years. Nobody does that because you've got a file share, right? And disk storage was cheap, except now nothing is cheap. When last have you looked at the numbers, Nick? When last have you bought a 1 terabyte NVMe drive?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna say more than a year ago, and it was cheap. NVMe was cheap.
The most expensive NVMe I have was bought a year ago. It's a 2230, so a baby one, square one for my external drive. And I think it was 1,600 Rand because it was the baby one, not the long one. Yeah. The long ones, which is the cheaper ones, saw a price yesterday, 3,499 Rand.
Good golly.
That's double the price. Forget RAM. That's just like NVMe, same, right? But disk storage is not cheap anymore, right? Even in the cloud, it's even more expensive. So being able to have a retention policy associated with content so that you don't have 17 terabytes, you have 7 terabytes. That means the person's stealing 7 terabytes, not 17 terabytes, blast radius, right? Vitally important that you get that done. And the thing is, all of this comes into play when you start looking at how everyone wants to enable Copilot inside of the organization. Are you speaking to customers that don't have Copilot?
By exception, and I think those are still grinding flour with rocks.
Okay. You have customers grinding flour with rocks. Okay.
Well, those are the only ones not using Copilot because everybody else buys the flour in a bag. And I don't have a single customer, not one, and we have hundreds of customers who are using AI in one way, shape, or form. They may think they are not, but it doesn't mean that the data isn't being pasted into a browser and leaving the building.
Yeah. And all of these things, like if anyone, and there's probably a lot of people that are starting to deploy Claude Cowork on their desktops. And the first thing it says, let's go build you a skill and give you connectors. Oh, what do you want to do? And you go, I would like to create proposals. Okay, let's switch on the skill and that connector. Please log in with your credentials. Yeah,
Ta-da.
here's your OneDrive account. Boom, right? In. So AI is also doing this, and AI will surface data, not necessarily to nefarious characters, but to people inside of your organization that they shouldn't have access to. One way of fixing that, sensitivity labels. So I hope everyone listening today has got some sort of context around the things that you can do, that you can literally do to prohibit the three topics, well, not three topics, the three news items from happening. Because if they did steal 35 terabytes worth of data or 35 gigs or whatever that number was, if it was encrypted, the file storing the key was encrypted, they'd walk out with nothing. Like the thieves that stole my Surface laptop without a charger, they left with a really, really nice doorstop, right? Yeah, a brick. So what should customers, people, anyone that touches IT touches tech from an IT perspective, what should they do? Go do this on Monday. Go and do this on Monday. Number one, start at it's super simple to identify confidential information. You'll start with legal, or you start with finance, or you start with HR. Right? Go speak to them and say, hey, where do you put your data and how is it protected?
Yes.
Literally.
You don't even have to discover it. You can just ask them, where do you put your data?
And I don't understand why customers or people don't do this. They don't. They're still very perimeter focused and identity focused. They never get to a point. I mean, this is the last bastion, right? People go, we don't have time for this. We've got 12 other projects. We're rolling out SAP. When that attacker is walking your SAP data in the form of files out of that, right? So go name your toxic data sets. Toxic's a bad word. Your confidential data sets, right? Go name them, right? Then go ask people, well, you know where you store it? Who's got permissions to that? We don't even have to get to the external sharing part. Just go look at who's got access to your data, right? Because everything is an identity attack. Understand that if Jane from debtors has access to the financial results of the organization, how good is Jane at protecting her identity? We don't even have to look at external sharing. Separate conversation, right? Just go start there and have those conversations, right? Do that. And then decide, well, okay, how do I encrypt this data? Not the rest and in transit stuff, but the actual data itself. Super simple. Apply a sensitivity label. By default, you encrypt the data. And then go ask Jane, who needs access to that? Give Jane a label. This is an oversimplification. It's a bit more difficult than just handing out labels to random people, right? You'd give HR a label that says, highly confidential, and ask Jane who are the people, or actually don't ask Jane, tell Jane to, when she works on a document, add the people that needs access to it, yeah, with the little pop-up when she labels the document. Then she still controls it. But only the 5 people that she said can view this document will have access to the document. Even if people get in and steal that document, only those 5 people can see it. Go do that. Go do that. That's encryption, right? Not the random bullshit that does nothing, right? Um, I'm getting worked up. Is it warm?
I actually see that. There's a little
Again,
bead.
right? Yeah, down sort of. There's a vein on my forehead, yeah, right? It's like when you lifting weights at CrossFit, right? That vein sort of pops up on my forehead when I have these conversations, right? And
Let
then
me talk to
also
this for a
make sure,
second, because this is where
absolutely,
things get
absolutely.
really, really practical. And you asked me earlier, so what does encryption at rest mean? Well, it means nothing, because we don't attack the data in the data center. We attack the logical construct, which is SharePoint, right? And now,
Yeah.
assuming that you want to share a file because it's labeled, what happens? Well, it's encrypted at action and egress. It's not encrypted because it's not double encrypted, right? It's not encrypted in your SharePoint library. It doesn't lie there in encrypted state. It lies encrypted on disk. However, if you try to do something with it, your DLP policy kicks in and the protection arrives. You know, it's like when as a dad, when you've got daughters and your daughter tries to leave the room with her boyfriend, you know, you stand up and you are that DLP action that intercepts the leaving, and you say, not with my daughter may you leave the house. You have to stay here in front of me, or I can watch the two of you and make things socially uncomfortable. Think about that action where on the action part, the mail gets sent, the file is accessed, the file is shared. DLP kicks in and makes it real.
You are the DLP.
I really am.
That's your. You are the DLP. Nick is the DLP. I referenced someone else similarly to that, and it's an interesting analogy. And I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to someone about my grandparents, right? My dad and my mom when they started courting, right? Dad used to show up at the house, and when they blew the candles out, he had to leave, right? That's the signal, right? It's
And
like a
that's
bat
DLP
signal.
right there.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Someone's going to blow out the
yes,
candle, right? And
yes,
then you need to
yes.
exit
That's
within
daughter
5 minutes.
protection.
Otherwise, yeah, it's oh, oh, gold, gold. I need a T-shirt that says that. But anyhow, yes. So tie these labels like I just described earlier on: retention, sensitivity, and the one thing we don't talk about here is insider risk, which is sort of kind of adjacent to
100%.
data security, but it's not new, but it's new, right? So again, coming back to Microsoft, information protection, DLP, and retention, all those signals, we always talked about signals, can be used. Information protection, retention inside of DLP, and those 3 different labels that you have, DLP policy, or at least the different policies, then get sucked into inside of risk management and also data security posture management, right? Data security posture management is about data security, but it takes all the signals that you get from information protection, data loss prevention, insider risk as well, and retention, and your agentic stuff, right? With its connectors, and it's sucked up into a nice shiny dashboard so that you have some form of observability, not the same as watching an agent eat tokens. But, you know, in the pre-AI world, we didn't care about tokens. We cared about who's accessing what and why they're looking at that. And it might be an oversharing thing. This person shouldn't have shared that. That's not malicious intent, but we monitor everything and we trust no one, right? So those are the sort of 5, and I think there's a 6th one. Yes. And this is the last thing before we go over to next top tip of the week. Again, when we talked about ownerless applications, because we talk about that as well, where we say an unmanaged application is an ownerless application. So think about orphans, right? They're unmanaged. And in very much the same way that you have ownerless applications, you also have ownerless content. And that's why we always say a team should have two owners, because if one owner leaves, there's still another one. In very much the same way, data should have owners so that you can blame the person. You can't blame the data. You can't scold a file, right? Why did you leave the building? No, the file doesn't care. The file says, well, I'm unmanaged. I'm a child. So you do need an owner that you can wag the finger at and say, you need to own the risk, right? You need to own the risk. So those are the top things that you should go do on Monday. Identify toxic data. Make sure that you can build out these policies. Look at DLP, how it can help you, and make sure that you also understand who owns the data so that you can hold them accountable.
That's a very rapid fire approach. And
Absolutely.
as you move to the next slide, there's something I'd like to just to put as a little bit of a cherry on top. So we've got the rapid fire slide, and on that slide, the last piece is data AI governance. And the way that I like to think about that is that song that goes off in my head. Mary, did you know? So Mary, did you know that Copilot can access all your files? It's a real thing. It's about as real as it gets. So we've done all of this stuff, but think about what everything that Alistair's just said. So you've protected yourself against the humans who can do the things that they can do and can't do. However, if you have an HR share and you are sharing your pay slips for every person in the company anonymously and tying that into an email, and Copilot finds that share, doesn't matter what you've labeled it, because Copilot acting as you can still read that data. That's a bit of a thing. So using that as an example, and the top tip of the week looks really obvious, but here's a way to think about this. You don't want to begin by asking what label every single file needs, because you'll never end. You actually want to start by asking which data could materially hurt the organization. And we talked about HR, we talked about legal, but consider that payslip example that can hurt the individual who's attached to that payslip. So if you think about this, choose the 5 data sets that could cause the most damage, and that could be personal, because we care about individuals. That could be organizational, because we care about legal, HR, and your IP, that thing that makes you you as a company. And then you look at the access. So that's a person, that's a guest, that's an application or agent that can access that. And you literally remove anything that the business owner can't justify. So that takes care of that. And after that, once you've got that data set, you apply taxonomy, DLP, and encryption in the way that Alistair mentioned in terms of layers, right? Not just blindly labeling and blindly encrypting everything. And then that focused review will reveal a lot more risk than months designing a perfect taxonomy that you never switch on anyway, because you're never done.
And nobody switches on, right? Everyone likes the fact that it's in observation mode, right? Or in simulation mode, or report only. And you know, they're too scared to go speak to business, and they do all of those things. So to wrap up today's show, go and look at your data, find the stuff that will burn holes in your eyeballs, like the guy from X-Men when he first learned that he can shoot lasers out of his eyeballs, not to be confused with Superman. And then
That's
also,
Cyclops.
you know, make sure that, well, the guy, I forget his name, and then
Cyclops.
Someone ate him up in that one. Yes, yeah. You read the comics, right?
I do. X-Men Series 1, Episode 1 onwards. Yes, I was. Marvel
Cyclops.
is the thinking person's comic, as opposed to the folks who...
Yes, the universes, right?
My mom died.
So to wrap up, right? It's important to, yes, protect your infrastructure. We've talked about that, ZTNA and all of those things. Ruthless access review is also important. So verify explicitly.
Think like a dad.
Least privilege. Yeah, a daughter leak prevention. Be that guy. and then start looking at, well, if someone got through those first two doors, right? The last door, the last bastion is to actually protect that data. Do we have more slides? No, that's it. Ah, whirlwind,
We are on the
Nick,
hour. Well
whirlwind.
done.
Did we smash it? Yes, we
One
absolutely
pass.
smashed it.
One pass. This is
Yeah,
very well.
we
This
did.
is
We did well. We
probably
did
the
well.
most robust treatment of data labeling classification that we've managed to do in an hour. Job well done.
We were okay with it, right? Normally we need 17 for this, but not today. Not today. Okay. So, Nick, what are we talking about next week? What are we talking about next week?
What are we talking about next week? If only there was a
Big Brother
place that
is
we
your
could go.
sock.
Oh, oh.
We're talking about, well, not Sentinel, but we're talking about sock, right? And what sock got to do with it, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
What are we going to do with the sock? And it's not the one you put on your feet, right? But it kind of does protect. It does protect you when you travel, right?
And there is a
So
dad element to that, right? Because just like your dad used to tell you, don't do that. There is a behavioral aspect to what a sock knows about you, and it does judge you.
for those that don't know, SOC is Security Operations Center, and next week we will talk to you about how a SOC needs to give you joy and not just be this thing that all logs go to die, because that's how a lot of people treat it. Oh no, we pay for incidents, or we pay for the size of the logs, right? And hopefully someone's staring at a dashboard like my kids, because they stare at dashboards. And we're going to help you understand the data that comes through inside of your SOC, and then what to do with the data. Or do we? Is it going to be a thing going forward that people have to care about the data, right, that goes into a SOC, or is AI just going to handle everything for us?
Well, if you feed junk to AI, it's still not going to give you decision support. So you should care. You should care what goes into your SOC so that data actually has something to action against.
Good thing. All right, that's it for this episode of SCI Fridays. If you made it this far, congratulations, because we are very excited that you stuck with us. You officially know more about your environment than whenever signed off on that we've covered by the firewall. If you've got something useful out of this, please tell us about it. We'd love to, again, look at the comments for the episode like we do. Well, also, please share this with people that might be interested in getting to know data or getting to know all things security, compliance, and identity management. And remember, attackers don't care about your policies, your slide decks, or your roadmap. They care about one thing: you forgot to lock down. And in this case, it's your data. We'll be back next Friday to help you figure out what that is before they do. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.